I've been heavily invested in sim racing lately, which, by the way, if you've ever been curious about trying it and haven't yet, do it. But could games like Final Fantasy XI learn something from this experience? I think so. Now, the sim racing experience revolves around physical feedback, the wheel pushing against you or giving way as you try to turn into or out of a turn. What? A soft rumble in your hands as you're just going along the standard straight versus like a violent shaking as you kind of hit that strip along the edges of the track. It's cool. It's really cool to feel that difference, and it's also critical to the experience. Because feeling those changes, you know how you should react to them. You learn as you kind of feel yourself giving way that you should maybe ease off or change how you're steering or, throttling, braking. And it's part of what makes the experience so irresistible to so many. You feel like you're on the track, and it makes sim racing all the sweeter. Now, of course, that's an experience that's very unique to wheels and pedals, which obviously aren't the main interaction points for a game like Final Fantasy XI. And until the PS5, it was one of the few experiences that really offered this as like a central core feature, that physical feedback. You could look at like Guitar Hero or Rock Band providing an actual physical instrument that you're pressing buttons on, and there is a feedback as you kind of hit the strum. What do you call the strum paddle? I forget on Guitar Hero. What do they call that thing? But for standard controllers, I mean, all we've really had for generations is various improvements to the standard rumble, all the way back to the N64 with its rumble pack. And that was it. I bring up the PS5, which I don't yet own myself, but I have had a chance to check out its controller because the new controller offers an insane level of detail of haptic feedback in the major triggers. They offer seriously different feeling depending on the actions that you're taking, almost to the point where sometimes you feel like you're really pressing against an incredible pressure, and then other times it's just loose and nothing and forgiving. Sometimes it's half and half, where the first part is very loose, and then you hit a pressure about halfway down, almost like you're hitting resistance somewhere. It's really detailed, and the possibilities are endless. The only example I can think of is like picking up a feather versus picking up a rock using those triggers can feel very different. And until you try it, you're like, there's no way this is that cool. And it is. I really think it's that cool. I think the Nintendo Switch controllers offered something kind of similar with their really dynamic rumble effects, but it ultimately did come down to just being a rumble. Now, it was really great at simulating different textures of rotating, pouring, shaking. You'd actually feel like there was something inside the Switch controller, which is funny because it's like the tiniest little thing in the world. But it's not really a haptic feedback in that sense. It's purely that rumble, different applications of that really detailed, fine-tuned rumble. But ultimately, this all got me thinking. I was sitting there, crashing and flying off the track and stuff. If we could get anything in Final Fantasy XI, what kind of feedback would make that game better? What would you like? I mean, MMOs are tough. They're long-winded. They're repetitive. They're grindy. So something that's physically applying to your body isn't always necessarily desired. It's one of the big things that has people concerned about, VR MMOs like Orbis VR, is that ultimately for hours on end you're waving your arms. If you're in full-scale VR, you're moving about a room. You're gonna get tired. Versus sitting at a desk or a big comfy chair in front of a TV, grinding out on enemy mobs for hours. So you introduce a couple of those elements that offer physical resistance to you, the player, and people might start turning them off after a while, be like, this is incredibly immersive and awesome, but it just sort of gets annoying hours 2, 3, 4 into the experience. But let's talk about it anyway. Imagine if when you were, harvesting, gathering, mining, that you could feel, you press the trigger to mine, and you'd feel the moment that you click and you feel a little kickback. And that's very different from, say, slicing grain or the different things you could, I guess you could chop down trees. You'd sort of find points in bushes that you could sort of slice at. So yeah, let's take slicing, chopping, and picking. It could be a very different, like a softer but still hard feel for the chop against like a tree. And like the pickaxe would give you almost like a bounce back as you hit a point for the mining. And then like slicing would just be like a soft whoosh where you don't barely even get any feedback at all, but there's still a little bit of something. I don't know. It's an idea. This seems kind of crazy, and I think everybody would immediately turn this feature off. What if chocobo riding, like you had to hold down to climb up onto the chocobo, and you could feel the resistance of you kind of pulling up, and it would kind of, if it made noises, it could waver a little bit in your fingers, and then it would bounce as you rode. Now, that'd be super annoying. Nobody would ever want to do that, but it's kind of a cool idea. Weapon skills, though, I really love this idea. What if over time, increasing weapon skills, going from, double thrust all the way up to wheeling thrust. Double thrust is just like a little hiccup. You barely even feel it every time you fire that off. But wheeling thrust is like a powerful, and you know physically as you're playing the game, holding the controller, that you've become more powerful. That'd be an amazing sense of feedback. I mean, we all remember those amazing moments when we get that new weapon skill, especially the weapon skills that can finally make light, but even moments like Viper Bite for Thief, and just doing that huge chunk of damage. What if there was a physical, visceral feedback from the game to your hands, your body, to also indicate that power creep, that increase in overall damage output and stuff? That would be incredible. Spells too. Stone 1 could just be like, but Stone 5 could be this amazing burst. You could even have like a rumble effect for like stone versus like a swishing up and down for water. I don't know, just like kind of really cool differences in texture that they could apply to the player, the feedback that could be shown as you're playing the game. For a game that focuses so much around immersion, and immersion is such an important aspect of the game for me, I would love these different types of feedback to draw me even further into Vana'diel. That would be incredible. But it could also just have beneficial aspects for the player in terms of not just immersion. What if the skill chain system and that timing window, there was an actual feedback where it started strong and you could sort of feel like, okay, I need to fire this off before this lessens too completely. And right before it disappeared, you'd know that, I'm about to run out of my weapon skill window to fire off that skill chain. Same for magic bursts. Or just as a way to kind of focus less on the logs, critical hits could have a different visceral impact than standard attacks or misses. So misses, you could even just feel, I'm missing this much, I'm doing standard attacks this much, I'm firing off critical hits this much. It's a different way to approach different class dynamics. Or like Dragoon, which a lot of people thought could be kind of boring with its limited actual movesets. It had a few jumps, weapon skills, and then the Wyvern, which kind of changed how it felt, but not really what it does. Could all of a sudden feel very, very different from a Dark Knight. And it could change totally how people enjoy different jobs. I remember playing Final Fantasy XIV 1.0 when it first came out, and one of the biggest things I was impressed by before its ultimate downfall was the weight physically that you could see behind like a large two-handed axe as somebody would swing it. You could tell that they were putting their whole body into it, and the impact looked amazing. And that was part of the physics that were still involved in the game at that point. And some of that still is retained, but you can tell there's just a little bit less of that feeling of the whole body getting behind a swing and this huge axe crashing into an enemy versus like a tiny dagger, which is like peppering and slicing away in tiny little increments faster, but not with those big hits. But with a controller that could provide that kind of physical feedback to the player, you could get that feeling all the time, not just visually, but in your hands. I think it sounds amazing. Now, I hate to be the downer at the end of all this. Obviously, it's far too late for any of this tech to be implemented into Final Fantasy XI. Hell, I don't think any of this tech is going to be implemented to any of the MMOs that we see on the current horizon. It's just not really there. We'll have to see how it kind of evolves along the PS5 and whether or not developers latch onto it as a really cool feature or just sort of drifts off like some of the other features we've seen over the years. I hope that it becomes a core aspect of what drives players to the PS5. It seems really cool, but only time will tell. I don't know, I just kind of thought of this. I really have been enjoying sim racing, and one of the reasons is because of that feeling of impact that like I am actually on a racetrack. And it's hard to get rid of that when the wheel is telling you you're on a racetrack. Tell me if I'm being crazy. Is this a dumb idea? Would this really not improve the overall Final Fantasy XI experience beyond just kind of like feeling cool for a day, but after a while people would turn it off as distracting or just tiring, not really ultimately that engaging, just a neat feature that doesn't really improve the overall player experience? Leave your thoughts in the comments below or join us on Twitch. We do stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A lot of times Final Fantasy XI, but other games too, other co-op games and single player games. We've been playing Persona 5 lately, by the way, amazing game. definitely check it out. Had not played it myself. Super fun. Otherwise, guys, keep a lookout for other videos like this, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace. Prowess and might.
Oh, I knew that was gonna happen.
So when you said one of these is a ninja,
It's a good use, guys.
was that what you meant?
I can't even. I can't even fight it.
You can't fight it?
No, I don't. I don't love that thing.